It was a rainy evening when the streets glistened under the yellow haze of streetlights. People hurried past puddles, clutching umbrellas, while the distant wail of sirens echoed somewhere far away. In a small, quiet neighborhood, a single dad named Mark closed the door of his modest home, exhausted from a long day at the diner. His dog Max, a large German shepherd with alert amber eyes, padded behind him, tail wagging but ears pricked for any unusual sound. Max had been Mark's companion ever since he had lost his wife years ago, and the bond between them was almost unspoken, an understanding deeper than words. Inside, Mark hung his jacket, poured himself a cup of coffee, and glanced toward the window. That's when he noticed movement in the alley across the street. At first he thought it was just a stray cat, but Max's hackles rose immediately. The dog growled softly, low and cautious, staring intently at the shadows. Mark squinted, trying to make sense of the dark shapes, but the rain distorted everything. Meanwhile, somewhere not far away, a girl named Lily was trapped in the back of a van. She was just 14, small for her age, with bright eyes that refused to dim even in the terror she felt. Her kidnapper had snatched her from a crowded park earlier that day. Now the vehicle rattled over wet roads, and every turn sent shivers through her body. She had tried to scream, to fight, to alert anyone, but the doors were locked tight, and the muffled sounds of the rain drowned her cries. Panic clawed at her chest. Then she remembered Max, the dog she had seen earlier in the park. Not knowing why, she whispered his name softly, almost as if testing a magic spell. Max. Help. The words barely left her lips, but somewhere in the rhythm of her voice, Max heard it. The dog's ears twitched, and he bolted toward the sound instinctively, knowing that this wasn't just a passing stranger's voice. Something in Lily's tone called to him, a silent plea for help only he could understand. Mark noticed Max tearing out the door and into the rain. Confused, he grabbed his coat and ran after him, sliding across puddles. Max led him through twisting alleys, barking at invisible threats, until the faint sound of an engine reached their ears. There, around the corner, the van lurched over a pothole. Slowing down for a moment, Lily pressed her face to the window, eyes wide, and did the only thing she could. She whispered a second signal, a barely audible tap on the glass. Max barked furiously as if acknowledging the message, and Mark felt a cold chill of realization. Something was wrong. Without hesitation, Mark sprinted toward the van. Rain soaked him to the bone, and the tires splashed mud around his feet, but he didn't care. Max leapt onto the van's side, scratching and growling, forcing the doors to wobble. The kidnapper shouted in panic, fumbling with his keys. But Mark and Max worked as a team, their synergy almost uncanny. With one final push, the back door swung open and Lily tumbled out into Mark's arms, shivering and crying. Max circled them protectively, teeth bared at the fleeing kidnapper. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Mark asked, holding her tight. Lily shook her head, still too scared to speak, but the relief in her eyes was undeniable. Max nuzzled her gently, and she finally whispered, "Thank you. Thank you, Max." Mark felt a lump in his throat. This moment, the silent signal, the loyal dog. The courage of a scared little girl was a miracle in motion. The police arrived moments later, sirens screaming through the night. The kidnapper was apprehended easily. He was clumsy and desperate, unprepared for the bond between a human and a dog that could read fear and urgency as clearly as any person. Officers complimented Mark for his bravery, but he only smiled humbly, looking down at Max, who wagged his tail as if to say, "All in a day's work." Lily, wrapped in a blanket and safe at last, never let go of Max, hugging him as though he were her savior, and in that moment he was. Over the following days, news of the rescue spread across social media. Headlines praised the single dad and his heroic dog. Videos of Max darting through the rain and barking at the van went viral, capturing hearts worldwide. Interviews with Mark revealed a man who only wanted to protect his daughter. And now, it seemed every child. Lily's story inspired countless others. A reminder that hope often comes in unexpected forms. A loyal companion, a brave stranger, and the courage to communicate even when words fail. But the story didn't end with fame. Mark and Lily became inseparable, almost like family. Every evening they walked Max together through the streets, laughing despite the memory of fear. And Max? He remained vigilant, forever attuned to danger, always ready to respond to the faintest whisper of distress. One rainy night, as Mark and Lily returned home, She looked at him and said softly, "I knew you'd come. I knew Max would bring you." Mark smiled, touched, and whispered back, "And we'll always be here, always." Weeks later, Lily returned to school, carrying the quiet strength of someone who had survived something unimaginable. She still glanced at the streets, half expecting danger, but the terror had softened into gratitude. Max trotted by her side, the silent guardian who had saved her life. And Mark, though exhausted and worn, felt a profound sense of purpose he hadn't known before. The bond they shared, girl-dad and dog, was unbreakable, forged in fear, courage, and a whispered plea for help. At night, when the city slept, Mark often thought back to the first moment he saw Max bolting into the rain, the instinct that had led him to the van. He realized then that true heroes weren't always humans. They were those who responded to signals that most people couldn't even notice. Those who acted without hesitation, guided by loyalty, love, and intuition. The media called it a miracle. Mark called it a lesson. Never underestimate the power of trust, connection, and the unexpected courage of a dog. And for Lily, the whispered signal had been her lifeline, proving that even in the darkest moments, hope could speak softly, but be heard loudly enough to save a life. As spring arrived and the streets dried, the trio continued their walks, visiting parks and neighborhoods. Aware that the world was both terrifying and beautiful, Lily learned to trust again. Mark embraced the quiet joy of heroism, and Max, he simply wagged his tail, ever watchful, ready for the next whispered plea. The story of the kidnapped girl who whispered to a single dad's dog became legend in their town. People would stop and tell their children about bravery, loyalty, and hope. And in a quiet corner of the city, a small family, man, girl, and dog, knew the truth. Survival isn't just about strength or speed. Sometimes it's about listening, believing, and acting when others cannot. Years later, Lily would tell the story herself, recounting the terror, the fear, and the miraculous rescue. She never forgot the gentle nudge of a dog's nose, the thunder of paws on wet streets, or the unwavering courage of a man who answered the call. And Max, he would always be there, ears pricked, waiting for the next whisper that might change a life forever.